Today I got Kris Rivera. Thank you for joining me. He's gonna show us how to do this Docker thing, and we're gonna Dockerize an application that I've already had. I use this in my trainings. So Kris, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Kris Rivera, and I'm a principal software engineer, and I've been a software developer for 15 years, and most recently I was a Docker keynote speaker. It was pretty exciting.
So I've got this Angular application right here. It's called RPS Tracker NG. It's a public repo on my GitHub. If you want to check it out, you can do that. And we're gonna Dockerize it because right now it's just a standalone application. It does have a backend associated with it, which is this API. So both applications have to be started at the same time, and this RPS API is just an Express app. So we're gonna try to, through this process, Dockerize both of those applications and use Docker Compose to run them together.
Yep, that is correct, and I'll be happy to walk you through that.
All right, let's do it.
Sounds good. So let's get down to your code editor then, and we'll start with creating our first file, which is the Docker file. The Docker file is going to allow us to write all the steps that are needed to be able to actually build the production version of our application. So we want to start with a capital D for the name of the Docker file itself. So
I'm gonna touch Docker file to create the new file.
Are we inside of the application itself at this folder level?
No, so the first thing to do is clone the repo,
Yes.
right?
All Docker files for applications usually live at the root of the application.
Okay, so I've cloned the repository. There it is. I'm gonna change the directory into it.
Perfect. Okay, so here, now we can touch a Docker file starting with a capital D and all one word.
Touch Docker file. So right now,
Perfect.
this folder does not have a Docker file. Let's just list the folder contents. These are all the files that are in it, no Docker file. If you do touch Docker file, that creates a new file called Docker file. There it is.
Perfect.
So I'm gonna pop this open in VS Code and let's have a look at that.
Sounds good.
It's an empty file.
All right, this is exactly where we want to be. Okay, so with any Docker file, what you want to do is you always have to start from somewhere. And so if you were to literally any container or any image that is built on something else. Even when you want to build a Docker file literally from scratch, they have what's called a scratch image called scratch. And that's where you would actually copy in like your operating system files and anything else that you would need to make sure that your program or your operating system runs correctly. So thankfully, we don't have to start from scratch. We could start from something else. So what we're going to do is on our first line, and you don't have to do this, but the general syntax is like the first word or directive is all caps. So we're going to type from all caps. And then we're gonna do, we need Node.js. So they already have an image for that. So let's do Node and then lowercase, colon, and then let's give it a version. So last time that I did this, the version that I saw that was supported for your version of Angular was 12.11.1. So we should be
16.
fine using that.
16 is the one that's currently required by Angular 14. I think.
Perfect. Then we're gonna fly by the seat of our pants here. Let's go 16. So you could just do 16. They have aliases. If you, for our viewers, if you wouldn't mind also opening up another Chrome tab to go to hub.docker.com, or I'm pretty sure it's hub.docker.com. Yes. Okay. And in the search at the top left, can you please type Node? And that first image is Node.js there. So if you click on that, you can see any Docker images that are available to you just on Docker Hub, and they're all free, they're all available. So the thing that's most important though is we're on the tags here, right? So you can actually search the tags. Right. If you type 16 on the filter tags, if you just type 16, you can see there's a ton of different versions. It's like LTS Alpine. There should be definitely, like there's 18, like I think there's matching too many things that are 16, but like you see how the next tag there is 16.15.1-Alpine that's at the bottom.
Yep.
Like that's a version of Node.js that is built on an Alpine Linux system. So there's tons, but they also have a generic tag that you could just type in Node 16 and it will get you the latest version of Node 16 for your Docker image as well.
Oh, that's in the Docker file, right? Node 16. Yeah. So if you do this, it'll just give me a generic 16.
Yes, and you should. And honestly, right now, what we've written is a valid Docker file. It's not doing much of what we want it to do, but at the very least, you're saying you're instantiating it from an already pre-built image. So, but we want to do more with it, obviously. We want to build Angular applications with this. So what I usually do is I create a working directory. The working directory is where you go and you build and you do a lot of things. You copy source files into it. It's not the final product. So if you new line and type in workdir, all one word, all caps, what I usually do, all caps too, please.
Oh, sorry about that. Work.
Yeah, I know.
This thing
tough.
is actually helping me do what I need to do. It's telling me what you need to do.
VS Code is super powerful.
Amazing.
Oftentimes I just use the /var directory. So I do /var/temp because it's just where I'm doing work in. So perfect. So now what that's doing is going to create a directory in the var folder called temp. And then it's actually basically going to CD into it. So any step after this will be done within the scope of that folder. So now we need to get to the point of where we really want to start copying and doing things. So the first thing that we need to do, with any application, what is it that we need to do? We need to install the dependencies, right? So the first thing that we want to do is we want to use the all caps add directive here.
So these are the Angular dependencies, right?
Yes, exactly. So if you notice where the Docker file on the left side is located, it's at the root of this directory. And so when you're writing a Docker file, it also it has scoped access to only itself and any child directory. So that's why you can't go out of it you can't go up and copy something that's like .. that's in a parent folder. So that's why you usually want to add the Docker file where the source code, the root of the source code is. So the first thing that we're going to do is add and then space package.json, and then we're going to do space dot afterward. So that's just saying copy the package.json file to where I am now, and it'll copy it and name it package.json. We're also going to want to do the exact same line, but for package lock.json as well.
And it's copying it to var/temp. Okay.
Because we're in the scope of var temp, so it's copying it perfect. And then you want to do dot afterward.
Yeah.
Yep, to tell it to copy it here. So right now, all we've done is copied or added these two files to the var temp folder. So the next thing that we want to do is actually just do the run command and say run npm install.
Just like that?
Yep. And so let's save this and test it out just to see it running before we start writing the rest of it. So we're going to drop to, please open a command line prompt to this folder. I think you already have one open, right? Or here, that works perfectly. So you have Docker installed on your system already.
I do, but it's not running right now. I need to kick that off, right?
We definitely do. So
we're going to need that.
that.
All right, so it's going to spin up, and we're gonna run Docker command right from here, right? From
yes,
the root.
we are. Exactly. So it looks like it's still running. You can see that in the top where the little containers are rising and falling like a volume mixer. Perfect. It is ready to go now.
There you go.
All right. So we don't need the Docker desktop right now. We're going to do everything command line. So what we're going to do is we're going to build an actual Docker image, and we're going to be able to build and override it and override it and override it. So what we're going to do is we're going to run, since we're in the scope of this folder, we're going to run docker space build, and we're going to give it a tag name, and we're going to do space -t, and then let's name it the folder project APS or RPS tracker ng. That's totally fine. And then last, we're going to do space dot. So what it's doing is saying, I want to build the Docker file that's in this folder, and I want to tag it with RPS tracker ng. And by default, Docker will add a :latest tag to the image as well. You can add any tag you want just by after the -t and the name. You could do : whatever else. Like, so you could name it 1.1.0 or any name or latest, but by default, if you don't provide a version basically, or a tag version, then it will do latest by default. So let's run this.
What does the dot do at the end there?
The dot is saying this directory in this folder.
All right, let's try it.
So the first thing that it's doing is that it's downloading the Node.js version 16 image. So you could see on step 1 of 5 where it's building there, you see it's Docker IO library node :16. And that's that node :16 is, it already downloaded it. You got fast internet there. So now it actually changed the working directory. It copied the package JSON and the package lock JSON. And now it's actually going to run this last step of npm installing. And if you notice, this is just like any other command line. This is just as if you were to have run this from this folder as well. But it's bundling it inside of an image in layers. And so you see right there, that last thing is exporting the image. It exports the layers. Boom. So right now we have an image. You can see here that it wrote and exported the different layers for this image. And so if you were to run this exact same command again, all the layers are cached already.
So that took no time at all.
0 time, because it's already done. It doesn't have to do anything because it does a checksum per line. And if you change the line, it basically invalidates the layers or the lines afterwards. So if you were, for example, on line 3 to change temp from temp to tmp, you'll notice that when you do the Docker build again, notice how it had to re-add package JSON, and had to re-add the package lock JSON and run npm install. Now, this is a very powerful thing that I'm showing you here as well, especially with a front-end application, because we're going to do a build afterward, and that takes even longer than the install usually, right? And so the package JSON, if that were to change, which it doesn't change often, it's basically signaling if my package or package lock JSON change, I need to run an install and then a build. But the next thing that we're going to do after this is we're going to start copying the source files in and then doing the build. So if only the source files change, we won't have to trigger an installation of the dependencies again, because those dependencies haven't changed at all. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Perfect.
Very nice, yeah.
Oh, okay. So so as you can see, it did its thing. It installed, it exported the layers again. And if you, again, just to prove sanity, if you run the Docker build command again, and we haven't changed anything in the Docker file, it'll be instantaneous, right?
Wow.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
So if I wanted to get everything from scratch now without going in here and changing the Docker file, how do I force it to sort of rebuild everything? Without checking the cache?
I would have to look that command. It's not a command. It is another property or another parameter of the Docker build. I believe it's just a force. But if we do Docker build, so this is a good way to do some self-service of discovery, space -- help. It will give us a whole list. So there should be -- no cache right there. So even if right now you were to add that no cache, we want to add it before the dot, because the dot is the last thing. It's the directory in which we want to build it. And we want it not in between the -t and the name of because the -t is indicating the name. So we want to add it there. Perfect. And now if we run it, notice it's doing it from scratch again, because it's saying ignore all the cache layers. I need this fresh every single time for maybe you have some security vulnerabilities that need to be checked in npm, and I need to make sure that that's something that changes outside of my container. Or there's a lot of different reasons why you would not want to use the cache. But in general, or the majority of the time, you want to take advantage of Docker's very advanced caching layer system to make sure that your CI/CD pipeline actually runs very smoothly.
Sure.
And as fast as possible. All right. So here's the next and the exciting part. There's another command that I have here written down for you that is really good to have, because in an Angular application, we're gonna do something, and I'm gonna give you a line that's gonna increase efficiency later for this, because this might be something that you might want to reuse again. But let's skip that for now. It's the ng compiler browser module compilations, and it's the IV entry points that happen when you compile. There's a command that you can run that will run first time after installation, but won't get in the way of slowing down your builds. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So
interesting. So this is an Angular specific thing.
Yes, I have something, an Angular specific like nicety and a speed up for you to make sure that you're only building as little as possible every time there's a code change. But we'll add that in later. It's a little bit of a complicated command. So, but the next stage is now let's add the whole folder. Now we like, okay, I have installations. We're good to go. Let's add everything, including our node module. So add dot space dot. It's saying add this entire source to where, like, think about it this way. When you're writing a Docker file, everything that's the first part of the command, it has everything to do with your host computer, everything that's on that you can see there. Whereas the second part of it is everything that happens in the Docker container or the Docker image that's getting built. So in this case, the first dot is everything that's within my host directory, which is right there. And then the other dots say copy it to the var temp folder, which is where we are because we set the working directory on line 3. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then the final magic command, we're going to do run npm run build.
So npm run build dash
C space production.
Oh, they made it another flag for like configuration.
Exactly.
Option.
Very interesting. Okay, so let's save that now.
There it goes.
So we see here now that, I mean, again, this is simply just all these commands are all commands that you would simply run from the command line. They're just adding their steps. They're self-documenting lines of code that are just to be able to produce the same thing in the same environment over again. Boom. We now have an image of your RPS Tracker NG project that is built. It is hanging out inside of the /var/temp/dist folder, which is where usually the output folder is. But we don't see any of it. It's in the image, and the only way to get to that is by running a container. But right now, this isn't very useful at the moment because it's like, great, I have something that builds this. We want a web server. We want to serve this, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to introduce something that's a slightly more advanced. It's called a multi-stage Docker file. So within the same Docker file, we're actually going to now switch gears and we're going to pull in another image afterward. And so what we're going to do is, first things first, what we need to do is we need to name the first part of this image, this node 16 builder. And so the way to do that is just capital A, capital S after the node 16. So it's as, and then I just call it front end. That part, yeah, that part you get. Yep, 100% perfect. So what we've done is we just aliased access to this part of the image building by the name front end. And then what we're going to do now is on the next line, we are going to pull in an Nginx image. And for those who don't know what Nginx is, it's a very lightweight but very configurable and advanced web server that allows you to write APIs and anything else. But it also can just act as a nice little front end server to serve up your front end. So what we're going to do is we're going to write from on the next line. We're going to write from, and it's going to be Nginx, yep, colon stable. So we want to get the latest stable build. And now here's the fun part. So this is where we're going to tie it all together. So any web server that has static content has a folder out of which they want to serve the static content. So the next line that we're going to do is we're going to do a copy command. And then
are we going to alias this one or no?
We don't need to alias this because the last image that we pull from is the de facto thing that is that remains. We're basically shedding everything behind us once the image gets built. Okay. But what we do want to do is copy what we have just built on line 12. So we're going to do space -- from equals. And we're going to say front end, just the same alias.
VS Code is just knows.
Yeah, there's a lot of repeatable, a lot of things that's just baked in. They even have, VS Code has some really nice Docker plugins as well that you can install to build and run containers and manage them as well if you don't enjoy doing this on the command line.
Now, I do have the Docker extension installed. Perhaps that's what's actually helping out here.
Yes, that's likely what's auto-completing a lot of stuff. So at the end of line 17, we're going to do space. And now we have to type in a path here. So we want to copy from one location to another. So it's /var/temp, just like our work directory. And then it's going to be /dist, D-I-S-T, / the name of your project, which is the RPS tracker NG. Perfect. And then space, this is going to be the location inside of the Nginx image where we want to serve the static content from. So /usr, so user, /share, /nginx, just like the name of the image, /html. So this now, what we've just done is said, okay, I know before this line, I have a perfectly built production version of my application sitting doing nothing. Let's pull down the Nginx stable image and then copy what we had before, because we don't care about having Node. We don't care about the package. We don't care about the source. All we care about is what gets produced from the previous stage. And then we want to copy that into our current image. And the last thing that we're going to do is we want to expose 80. So we're going to write the command expose. And so it's just 80. Yep, that's it. So this is saying, this is allowing access to this running container via port 80. And then it's going to serve the static content for us. So let's save this and build it.
Perfect. So now it's going to download this Nginx image. So it's going to take a little bit longer to do that.
Yeah, but not too long.
But it's always the same command.
Yep. And remember, once it's done, it caches it also.
Right. So if we look at Docker Desktop, should those two images now be in there listed?
Docker Desktop, I don't believe lists images. It lists. Oh, it does have the images.
Yeah,
perfect.
It's got.
Yeah, you should
probably
see
have a few more things in there.
But yeah, it's down there. If you scroll down, you see the RPS tracker NG.
Yep. There it is.
Excellent. So.
Oh
no. Okay. Well, here's another thing. I wonder if in Angular 14 if they changed it to a different like out or some other directory. So let's on this command line here run npm run build -c production to see where it actually gets spit out to.
So I was thinking that it's a DST folder, not DIST, but
it's been DIST. I wonder if they changed it. Oh yeah, it's been like that forever. I wonder what might be going on. So yeah, in your terminal, let's run that exact command. And you see just how easy it is, because you're taking what is already the command and just dropping it in there. So look, they changed it into a .angular folder. They're getting fancy.
Look at this. Oh, there is a DIST.
Oh,
you were
hey,
right
look.
anyway.
Oh, okay. So that's an Angular cache.
That's a cache.
Oh, they added 14 to the end. That's
14?
Because of the version of Angular. That's a little frustrating, because that, I'm sure, has broken everyone's every single person's CI/CD pipeline that relies on this just broke because they appended the version. That's very strange.
Yeah.
And if you want to make this Docker file more dynamic, then you would have to introspect and read the version from the package JSON to then append it to the name of the copy line, and that's very, very frustrating to me. I wonder if you can. I'm assuming there's a way to configure it, but for now, and for the sake of this video, let's add the 14 there.
Let's add the 14. But that is kind of frustrating, though.
Yeah, but this also shows how you debug Docker file creation and addition and whatnot. So
useful info for sure.
So I want to point out something, that we didn't actually make a change to any of the source files, but we're having to run the build again. What do you feel is causing that?
Well, yeah, that is interesting. Why is it running the build again?
It's because the Docker file is included in part of that. So by us saving the Docker file, we're also changing the source that changes and what's getting copied in. And therefore, it's forcing that line 10 to invalidate any further lines afterwards. So so I want to add something to this as well to show anyone watching this that there's a .dockerignore file as well that we will want to do. And there's good reason for this, and we'll see now why as well. So in the root of this RPS tracker ng, let's write a new .dockerignore all one word file.
Dockerignore, all lowercase, like that,
yep,
right?
All lowercase, yep, perfect. And what we want to do is we want to add a few things to this. The first one is capital D Dockerfile. We don't want to have that cause a change. The next thing that we want to ignore, we don't want to copy.
So if I run this build one more time, it's gonna take as long, right? Because can you repeat why that is again?
Because when we on line 10 add the entire contents of this folder, we're actually adding the Docker file as well. Actually, you know what? I take that back. It's not the Docker file that's being changed. It's because we installed a dist and a .angular and a node modules each time. That's actually what it is. The Docker file is ignored, but anything else around it is still part of it. So we don't want to copy the node modules. We don't want to copy the dist. We don't want to copy the .angular either. So what we're going to do in the Docker ignore, let's actually remove the Docker file line in there, because I just remember that it doesn't copy that. But let's do node underscore modules /. And then let's also do dist /. And then also .angular /. Because we don't want any of these files. First off, we don't need any of these, because when we run the install and we run the build, we're doing it within the container. So we don't want any of our local development files, because remember also that this is running, that image is running on some Linux distribution, and you're running this on Mac OS. So there are some libraries that do get compiled specifically for Mac OS versus Linux versus Windows, and you don't want to accidentally overwrite the files that are needed for compilation inside of the Linux environment by your Mac operating system files, right? So let's save this and let's rerun the build. It will likely have to incur that once more, and then just to prove sanity, we're going to make a small change in the Docker file as well and prove that the Docker file changing does not incur build penalty on that add line. Okay. But that was still pretty fast, right? We already had the Nginx image. We already just needed to copy it, and then that's it. I was hinting at this like almost efficiency line, and I want to, so let's go to the Docker file. And after the npm install line, but before the add, we're gonna do one other thing. And so this is a little bit of a long line. I wonder if I can chat this to you here. So I'm going to paste you this line here.
This is a copy and paste kind of thing for sure.
Yeah. Okay, but I would love to explain this. So so many people don't know that ngcc is the Angular compiler, and so you can actually invoke any like the ng and the ngcc and any other CLI based commands that are inside of our node modules folder with the npx command. Or it comes with npm version 6 and higher, I think, or maybe 7, I can't remember. But then what we're doing here is with the certain properties of compiling the for ES 2015 modules and main, and we create Ivy entry points because Angular as of version 9 and /10 had introduced a new renderer called Ivy, and so a lot of the modules that have to be built for visual representation and components and rendering need these initial Ivy entry points, and this also by itself is something that costs time, and you don't want like that will get run on line 14 if you don't have it, but these don't change unless the library files change. And so let's take out some of the time of build and put it beforehand, right?
Makes sense. There is one thing that concerns me, and that's ES 2015, because I believe Angular 14 targets ES 2020. But
okay,
let's try this out.
You should be able to change that as well, but I hope it doesn't target ES 2020 only because when it outputs the types, this is when the TypeScript compilation completes, that it has to compile it down to a compatible version for browsers, and I think all browsers support ES 2015. So, but let's give it a shot. Sure.
Yeah, let's try it. So we're gonna build, and this is supposed to. It ran that line, and it ran it just fine.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And so when you have other libraries that, like, when you start getting to more like for work and enterprise grade, and you move out of the personal realm, that line actually can take up to like 2 or 3 minutes, depending on how many other libraries have modules that need to be compiled down for compliancy across different browsers. And so that's why adding that line in is actually really nice to have.
Yep. And that hardly took any time at all on this machine, because this is a brand new project. Like you said, in production project, that will take a while, right? I'm not 100% sure that 2015 is the right way to go here, but I also I don't know. So let's try 2020 and see if it breaks anything.
It likely will not break for the compilation, but maybe when we're actually running the production files, there may be an issue running this if the browser doesn't support the version of JavaScript to which it's exporting.
Okay, so
like, it doesn't hurt to go to older versions of JavaScript to be more compatible, because that's what's getting produced. It has nothing to do with how you write your code. It has everything to do with the end result when we build this production files. All right. So now, what do we do with this? We have our image. We've built it. We have an Nginx stable container. We're copying our production files out of the dist folder into our static folder so that Nginx can serve them. So how do we test this? And then on the last line, we're exposing port 80. So the way that we can test this is, let's actually run this image in a container. So
let's do it.
On the command line, I would love you to type docker space run, and we're going to do a -d flag. That means that we're going to run it in detached mode instead of monitoring the logs. We can actually run it in non-detached mode if we want to, but soon we'll do that. And then we're going to do space -p space, and then this 8080:80. And so what this is saying right here is the port is saying, I want to map port 8080 to the internal exposed Docker port 80 that we're exposing from the container. So it's a mapping, right? And then we're going to say space --name, and let's call it the same name as the image. And this is okay. RPS tracker ng. Perfect. And then let's do space --rm. And what that means is that when we stop the container, it auto removes itself, because a container can be started and stopped but not removed, and it gets a little annoying when you're trying to test things out. So --rm is an easy way to do some auto cleanup along the way. And then finally, the actual name of our image, which so happens to be RPS tracker ng as well. Now, that's all you need. That's all you need. If you hit enter, the image is already built. It starts it up.
Wow.
It's already running. If you do
That's it.
docker space ps, you'll see the running container on the command line.
And there it
So
is.
there it is. And now if we go to our browser and we go to localhost port 8080.
Hey,
Oh.
look at that.
That says welcome to Nginx.
Oh,
Not
yeah,
our
that should
not
say.
our file contents. Yet the next step, I wonder, can we go back to VS Code, and I would love to see the actual contents of dist in the left side, and then RPS tracker. Yeah, there's the index.html. This should work exactly as expected. Let me make sure. On line 19, there's an error. It should be USR, not USE, because it's the user folder. So this is good though, because we
That's
just
my
need to
bad.
build. So what we need to do first you can build it and it'll build fine. But what we want to do, we need to stop the container as well and then start it up again, because the container is running on the prior version of the image that has that erroneous line in it.
Okay, so that has now been rebuilt, but
Right.
the container is still running. We
Right.
need to remove it.
So you need to do docker space stop space RPS tracker ng, and that's the name of the container, not the name of the image. It may be a little strange, but that, by it telling you and spitting out the name back to you, means that it did the command correctly. If you do docker ps, you shouldn't see anything. And then if you
Right.
do docker ps space -a, it will show you all stopped containers. And notice that there's no stopped containers either. So the --rm flag indeed did what it was supposed to do. It removed the container automatically after stopping it. So,
Oh, nice.
so now we can easily and cleanly just run that run command again that you have in your history. Yep. And it's already up, running. Let's go back to the browser. And there it is. There you
love
go.
it.
There you go.
Love it. It's working.
Yeah.
It's working great.
But this is just the
But,
front end.
there's no data because, the front end is there, but there's no data because
Right.
we didn't start that one up.
Exactly. So this is how you can build, at the very least for your front end, a production grade image where you are writing out all the steps for your Docker file. Everything is very self-documenting, because whatever is used to build is also the thing that you have to update. So it will never get out of step with any documentation or any user docs of how to do something. This is just its own documenting lines here in the Docker file.
Nice. Love it. All right. Well, I guess the next step is doing a Docker compose and running the backend.
Yeah.
So let's do that in the next episode. What do you think?
Sounds good to me.